uh, Milan, Milano, and Venice, and then home, while our ship went on farther west to Marseille. In Marseille, some of our seamen jumped ship to join the Spanish revolutionary side, in other words, the communist fighters fighting against Franco. And people came around and offered the seamen considerable money if they would sign up for fighting. The American consul, of course, was very active, watching for the seamen, telling him what is likely to happen. And as far as I was concerned, I would never even consider it seriously, because being foreign born, I probably could never again get back into the United States if I had been foolish enough to take one of these offers for high money and fight in Spain. I wasn't that dumb in those days, never was. Anyway, Marseille was an interesting city. Again, a lot of sightseeing. Sitting there on that big boulevard, watching the people going back and forth and having a good time. Marseille was okay. But we were there only in Marseille, naturally, the main meal included bouillabaisse, the best I have ever seen, with all the trimmings, like the fancy colored shells in it. The steward or the cooks had made an extra batch, so the crew got some, and my having to work every night, of course, I got there when it was all still nice and hot, and I got all I ever wanted of that stuff. The food was excellent on that ship. Whenever we came into a port, we had what was typical for that area, and we had it fresh and in first-class quality. Anyway, we were in Marseille and left now for the last leg across the Atlantic, and that will come on the next time I continue this. So long. Well, the other side of the tape, we ended up where the boat docked in Hoboken, and my sister Nellie and her husband Albert came over to see me, more or less to pick me up on the way over, where I would spend a few days with them. After all, the boat had been tied up, and nobody knew just how long it would be tied up. I took Albert aboard ship and showed him some of the crew's quarters, and among other things I took him through the galley, and in the galley he discovered where the seamen had stolen a sack of cashew nuts which we had picked up in Penang and had roasted them. Albert wasn't slow. He saw the cashew nuts. He is a short fellow, about 5'2" or so, and rather stocky. When he went out off the ship, his pockets were just bulging with nuts. He looked like a chipmunk, except that both the pants pockets, the hip pockets, and the pockets in his jackets all were bulging out. I don't know how many cashew nuts he took along, but he must have had pounds and pounds of them. I went to visit Nellie, and there was very little work aboard the ship. There was no baking to be done. All the food was cheaper to buy on the shore and bring it and feed the crew on the ship until it was decided what to do. I was getting a little impatient because the new semester was approaching, and I had to get back to Berkeley. I even took a chance on getting off the ship and go on to Berkeley on my own, losing all the money, my earnings, if I stayed on the ship. But fortunately, I was on the list of crewmen to be signed off within the next few days, and I got my money plus bus fare. That was good. I took a bus home. On the bus I met another German by the name of Essig, translated to vinegar. Very nice fellow who went to San Francisco, and I had to tell him where the Kolbing Society house was. I never again met him, but on the bus trip from New York to San Francisco, he was good company. On that bus trip we went all the way to the southern states, like we went all the way down to Louisiana, then Texas, and really saw a good part of the United States. I didn't like the bus too much. Also, I never stayed overnight any place. I always slept on the bus, ate in whatever restaurants the bus stopped at. It wasn't too bad, but there's nothing outstanding on that bus trip. So we came into San Francisco. On the way in, before we ever got to San Francisco, in El Cerrito, my landlady's daughter, Lothrop's, had the Idaho Motel, and that's where I asked the bus driver to let me off. He stopped, took my suitcase off, and I went in there, and they let me stay there, so it didn't cost me anything. And now it was the end of 38, and I was ready for my senior year at the University of California. I was late for signing up, and I really had to work very hard to make up for the few days, but I did get in on all the courses I had to do to finish my work. I kept a real tight schedule that year, still doing the same thing, working in the boarding house, taking a few jobs, doing upholstery work, going out with my girlfriend as often as I could. But things started to cool off a little bit. Then came again the spring of 39. My studies were all in the clear. I knew I would graduate, and things worked out fine. Graduation came along. I got a BS degree in electrical engineering, and I was ready to look for a job. But to look for a job, I had to have some better clothes. I needed a lot of things, and I didn't have any money. Also, at the end of the school semester, I couldn't do any more hashing in the boarding house, so I simply had no choice but to go back aboard ship. I had applied for jobs in Western Iron Works and the Pacific Gas and Electric Company and the telephone company, the only companies that really offered a chance for electrical engineering graduate, but they didn't hire. Also, the PG&E let me know through a friend of mine that they are sorry they can't hire me because of my German accent. And don't forget, the war had now started in Europe, or at least it was pretty close to starting, and people were wondered whether there was any feeling against the Germans like there was in World War I. So I didn't get a job right away. I couldn't wait. I went back aboard ship as a baker, and this time it was on the steamship Cleveland, the American President Lines. I made 2 trips between San Francisco and Manila, going by way of Yokohama and Shanghai. Shanghai had been occupied by the Japanese, that is half of Shanghai. The other half was still under British control. One day in Shanghai, I went up on the bridge on the Wangpu River, and of course there were big signs, no photos to be taken. But there was a little sampan down there which had a swastika, a German swastika flag. I couldn't resist and took out my camera and took a picture. And there were two Japanese soldiers running towards me. And of course I ran into the other direction. At the end of the bridge was a British army compound, and a big Scotsman in full dress uniform, kilt and everything, motioned me to get into the compound. I went in, and of course the chaps couldn't get in there, so I was safe. I took a picture of that Scotsman, tall man, he must have been about 6'4", handsome. But anyway, he saved me that day, and I didn't take any more chances in Shanghai. We went down to Yokohama, to Hong Kong from Shanghai. And in Hong Kong, I had previously met a Chinese fellow who acted as my guide, and I went around with him. He again showed me all of Hong Kong. I liked Hong Kong. It's a beautiful place, beautiful harbor. I bought souvenirs in the flea market. I went into one store and looked at some silk paintings, and the Japanese wanted probably $1. I knew that was too much, so I hesitated. When one of the Chinese said, "Very, very smart American, pay $2 for these pictures." And I couldn't resist saying, very dumb Americans pay even more than that. And that was so funny to them that he told me, your price, your price. I paid 25 cents for the pictures. I bought about 6 of them. Very nice paintings and silk. And when I walked out, I kind of thought I really had gotten a good deal when the Chinese guides told me, you didn't do too badly, but they're not worth that much. We went around Hong Kong, sightseeing, went on to Manila, and I bought some rather nice Chinese furniture and a cedar chest for my girlfriend. Coming back from Manila, I also brought back some, I don't know what it was, I think it was papayas or something from Manila to the Chinese fellow, and of course he never thought that I would do anything like that, but why not? He was a good guide and he showed me a lot of it. One time I wanted a real Chinese dinner, so he took me into a restaurant and he ordered, and I showed him that I had money. They always waited until the seaman would show the money before they would serve him. So there I showed him the money in the afternoon, and in the evening we came and they dished up something like 15 or 18 courses. I asked what some of these things were, and there were shark fin and prawns, and another thing I asked, what is this? So the guide, he tried to translate and said, well, it comes from the inside skin of a chicken's belly. Well, from then on I didn't ask anymore, I just ate. And while I was sitting there eating, I had one or two, I think 2 Chinese musicians sitting right there, fiddling along on their 1 or 2 string Chinese violins, until finally I had enough of it, and I paid them off, and they bowed and they got something to eat, and they were very happy. And I could then brag of having a real fancy, real Chinese dinner in Hong Kong. We went back. That was the second trip. We started back in about August. Came into Honolulu, and the first bit of news we got in Honolulu, that the war had broken out in Europe. It was now the beginning of September. Of course, great excitement.